She came home early. That was all. Nothing dramatic about it. Nothing planned. Her language class had ended 40 minutes ahead of schedule. The instructor had a family emergency, apologized twice, dismissed everyone with a small bow, and Zola had stood outside on the pavement in the thin Seoul afternoon light, thinking she might as well pick up groceries on the way back. She had bought vegetables, tofu, the specific brand of soy sauce Min-jun liked, even though he had never once thanked her for remembering it. She came home early, and she put her key in the door, and that was the last moment her life was the shape she thought it was. The bags hit the floor slowly, not dropped, released, like her hands simply forgot what they were holding. The tofu, the vegetables, the soy sauce Min-jun liked, all of it settling onto the kitchen tiles while Zola stood completely still in her coat and listened to the silence that followed the sound she had heard from the hallway. The bedroom door had not been fully closed. She had not needed to open it. She stood there for what felt like a very long time, long enough for the shock to move through her body and settle somewhere low in her chest, long enough for her mind to try and offer her an explanation that wasn't the one that was true. It tried several. She rejected all of them. She was not a woman who lied to herself. She had always considered that a strength. Standing in that hallway, she was not sure anymore. Then she did something that would stay with her for a long time afterward. She picked up the groceries, walked to the kitchen, and put every single item away. The tofu in the refrigerator, the vegetables in the crisper drawer, the soy sauce in its exact place on the third shelf. Methodically, one by one, like if she could just keep her hands moving, the rest of her would hold together long enough to get through the next 5 minutes.
She was still standing at the counter when Lena walked in. Her sister stopped in the kitchen doorway. She was wearing one of Zola's cardigans, pale blue, the one Zola had bought herself for her last birthday, and her hair was down, and her face did something complicated and terrible when she saw Zola standing there. "Zola, don't!" Zola's voice came out quieter than she expected, quieter than she felt. "I can explain." I said, "Don't." The silence between them was the kind that changes things permanently. Lena's mouth opened and closed. Her eyes were already filling, and Zola watched it happen with a detachment that frightened her a little. The way you watch something from very far away, even when it is right in front of you. "How long?" Zola said. It was not really a question. Lena looked at the floor. "How long, Lena?" 3 months. It came out as barely anything. "Since I got here." 3 months. Since she got here. Since Zola had been the one to push for the visit, to make the calls, to convince Min-jun it would be good for Lena to have a change of scenery. She had arranged her own betrayal with both hands and called it love. Something moved through her then. Not sadness yet, not rage yet. Something that came before both of those things. Something that had no clean name. "He doesn't love you," Zola said. "You understand that." Lena's chin lifted. A reflex. Defensive. "You don't know that." "I know him." "Maybe you don't know him as well as you think." And there it was. The thing underneath the thing. Zola looked at her sister. Really looked at her. The way you look at someone when you are finally done being careful with them. And saw the shape of something that had been there for years. A resentment worn smooth from long carrying. A grievance so old it had started to feel like personality. "Is this about him?" Zola asked. "Or is this about me?" Lena said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. "Say it." Zola's voice had changed now, still quiet, but with something harder underneath. "Whatever it is you've been holding on to, say it now, because after today there may not be another chance." Lena looked up. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set, and when she spoke, It came out like something that had been waiting a very long time for a door to open. "You always made me feel like I was less than you," she said. "Like everything came easy to you and I had to fight for scraps. Like I was the afterthought. Like no matter what I did, you were already there first, already better, already enough. And everyone just accepted that, like it was natural, like it was fine." The words landed. Zola felt each one. "And Minjun?" Lena stopped, started again. "Minjun sees me. He actually sees me, not as your sister, just as me." Zola was quiet for a long moment. "He's my husband," she said finally. The simplicity of it was almost absurd. "I know." Lena's voice broke on it. "I know, Zola, I know." The fight that followed was not clean or brief. It moved through the apartment like weather, loud in places, eerily silent in others, circling back on itself the way old wounds do when they finally split open. Things were said that had been waiting years to be said. Things were said that had no business being said at all. At some point, Zola was crying without having decided to. And at some point, Lena was sitting on the kitchen floor. And at some point, Minjun appeared in the doorway from the bedroom with the specific expression of a man who understood that whatever control he thought he had over this situation had already left the building. Zola looked at him once. Just once. Then she picked up her coat from the chair where she had draped it, walked to the door, and left. The hotel was near Han River. Nothing expensive, nothing special, just clean and quiet, and completely hers for the night. She sat on the bed fully dressed and stared at the wall opposite for a long time. The room hummed with the particular silence of spaces that have never held anything personal, and she found she was grateful for it. She did not call her mother. She could not bear the weight of her mother's worry on top of everything else, could not bear to hear the way her mother's voice would soften and fracture at once, the way it always did when one of her daughters was hurting. She would call her. Just not tonight. She opened her phone and scrolled through photographs instead. Her wedding day, the Kang family home in Songbukdong, lanterns strung between old trees, Minjun in a navy suit looking at her with an expression she had believed completely. Their first apartment in Seoul barely furnished. The two of them sitting on the floor eating delivery because there was no table yet, and it had felt like an adventure. Lena arriving at Incheon Airport 3 months ago, dragging an oversized suitcase and grinning that wide, untidy grin that had always made Zola feel like whatever room they were in had just gotten brighter. She closed the app, ordered food she didn't eat, sat with the television on for company without watching it, fell asleep eventually, still dressed, lights still on. In the morning, Minjun called 17 times. She watched each call end on the screen. On the 18th, she picked up. "Zola." His voice was hoarse. She wondered distantly if he had slept. "Please come home. We need to talk." "I need a few days," she said. "Zola." "Minjun." Her voice was steady in a way that surprised her. "I need a few days. I will call you." She hung up before he finished his next sentence. Then she put the phone face down on the bed, ordered coffee from room service, and sat by the window, watching Seoul move through another morning entirely indifferent to what had happened to her. She watched it for a long time. And somewhere between the coffee going cold and the city shifting from morning to midday, something began to form in the back of her mind. Not a plan yet, not quite. Just the shape of an idea, the outline of something deliberate. A thought that felt, for the first time since she had walked through that door, like it belonged to her. She let it sit, turned it over slowly, By the time she checked out of the hotel, it had sharpened into something she could hold.
She walked for most of the morning. Seoul did what Seoul always did, moved around her with complete indifference, loud and layered and alive in a way that felt almost offensive given the state of her interior. Markets opening, delivery bikes threading through gaps in traffic, school children in matching uniforms walking in loose clusters, office workers moving with the particular purposefulness of people who knew exactly where they were going. She had spent 3 years in this city and still sometimes felt like she was watching it through glass. Min-jun had always said she just needed more time. More time, and she would feel it. She had believed him for most of those 3 years, because believing him had been easier than examining what it meant that she still felt like a visitor in her own life. She walked until her feet made the decision her mind had been circling all morning. She ended up in Seongbuk-dong without fully meaning to, or maybe she had fully meant to and just hadn't admitted it yet. The neighborhood was quieter than the parts of Seoul she usually moved through. Older somehow, the streets narrower and the trees taller and the light coming through them at angles that made everything look slightly more considered than it actually was. She knew this area. She had been here for family dinners, for holidays, for the careful performances that constituted her relationship with the King family. She had always been polite. She had always been appropriate. She had always been exactly what was expected of her. She was very tired of being exactly what was expected of her. The coffee shop was small, the kind that had been there long enough to stop trying to impress anyone. 4 tables, a counter, a handwritten menu board, the smell of something roasting slowly in the back. She had been here exactly 4 times, always briefly, always in passing. She knew Sung-jin came here on weekend mornings because Min-jun had mentioned it once with the mild contempt he reserved for anything his brother did that he didn't understand. He just sits there for hours, Min-jun had said, reading, alone, like he has nowhere better to be. Min-jun had meant it as criticism. Standing outside that coffee shop, Zola thought it sounded like the most peaceful thing she had heard in years. She pushed open the door. Sung-jin was at the corner table, a book open in front of him and a coffee gone mostly cold beside it. He looked up when she walked in, the reflex of someone whose attention lifts at the door, and something moved across his face when he recognized her. Not surprise exactly. Something more careful than surprise. He put the book down. "Zola," he said. The way he said her name had always been different from how Min-jun said it. Min-jun said it quickly, like a checkbox. Sung-jin said it like it was the actual word for the actual person. "Are you okay?" She crossed the room and sat down across from him without being invited. The presumption of it registered somewhere in the back of her mind, and she let it go. She was done asking permission for things. "No," she said. "I'm not." He didn't say he was sorry to hear that. He didn't offer the reflexive reassurances people offered when they were more uncomfortable with your honesty than genuinely concerned about your well-being. He just looked at her with the particular steadiness she had always noticed in him from a distance, the quality of a man who did not need to fill silence with noise, and waited. So she talked. Not everything, not the full shape of it yet, but enough, the broad strokes, the things she had found, the fight with Lena, the hotel room, the 17 missed calls. She kept her voice even. She was not performing composure. She was genuinely somewhere beyond the part where she needed to cry about it. The crying had happened last night in the dark. This was the morning after, and the morning after had its own different texture. Sung-jin listened without interrupting, without looking away, without doing the thing people did where they started composing their response before you finished speaking. When she stopped talking, he was quiet for a moment, genuinely quiet. not the performed pause of someone about to say something they considered profound. "How long have you known?" he asked. "About Min-jun? In general, I mean. Not just this." The question surprised her, not because it was wrong, but because it was exact. "Longer than I admitted to myself," she said. He nodded slowly, like that confirmed something he had been sitting with for a while himself. "I'm sorry," he said. Not on his behalf. Just, "I'm sorry this happened to you. Don't apologize for him." "I'm not," he said. "I'm apologizing to you. There's a difference." She looked at him across the small table. The coffee shop moved quietly around them, the soft knock of cups, a low radio somewhere in the back, the door opening briefly to let in a rush of street noise before closing again. She had the strange sensation of being more present in this moment than she had been in months, like something that had been slightly out of focus had finally sharpened. "What do you need?" he asked. The question was simple, genuine, no agenda underneath it that she could detect. She held it for a moment. The idea that had been forming since the hotel room was fully shaped now, sitting at the front of her mind with a clarity that was almost calm. She looked at Sung-jin, at his steadiness, his patience, the way he had just listened to her like she was worth listening to, and felt the idea settle into a decision. But not yet. She wasn't ready to say it yet. "I don't know," she said. "But I'll tell you when I do." Something shifted in his expression, subtle, unreadable. He picked up his coffee, found it cold, set it back down. "I'll be here," he said simply. She went back to the apartment that evening. Lena was gone. Not just out. Gone. The guest room was emptied with the thoroughness of someone who understood they were not coming back. The bed made with the particular neatness of guilt. A small note on the pillow that Zola picked up and read once and then folded and put in her coat pocket without responding to it. She did not know yet what she felt about Lena. She suspected it would take a long time to find out. Min-jun was in the living room. He had clearly been there for hours. The stillness of him on the couch had the quality of a man who had run out of ways to distract himself and was now simply waiting. He stood when she walked in. He had prepared things to say. She could see it in the way he arranged himself, the careful posture of someone who had rehearsed. She sat down in the chair across from him, not beside him on the couch, the chair, and folded her hands in her lap and said, "Go ahead." He went ahead. He was sorry. He had made a terrible mistake. It had meant nothing. And then he stopped himself on that one, seemed to realize how it sounded, tried a different angle. He loved her. He had always loved her. He had been under enormous pressure at work, which was not an excuse. He knew it was not an excuse, but he needed her to understand the context. He had ended it. It was over. He wanted to fix this. He wanted her to give him the chance to fix this. She listened to all of it. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, 8 months. He blinked. "What?" "It wasn't a mistake, Min-jun. A mistake is once. This was 8 months. She watched his face change. The work trip in March that ran 3 days longer than scheduled. The Friday evenings you started working late in July. The way you stopped looking at your phone when I was in the room. She paused. I noticed all of it. I just kept deciding not to know. The rehearsed remorse on his face had given way to something raw. Not contrition exactly. More like the particular discomfort of being seen more clearly than you wanted to be. "I'm not leaving today," she said. "I need time to make arrangements. But I want you to understand something." She met his eyes. "This is not a conversation about whether we can fix it. This is me telling you what happens next. Zola, I'm not finished." Her voice was still quiet, still completely steady. "You're gonna make this easy for me. The apartment, the paperwork, whatever needs to happen. You're going to make it easy. Because the alternative—" She reached into her coat pocket, took out her phone, opened something and held the screen toward him. She watched him read it. She watched the color leave his face. "Where did you—" "It doesn't matter where." She put the phone away. "Do we understand each other?" He sat back down on the couch, slowly, like his legs had made a decision without consulting him. "Yes," he said, quietly. "Good." She stood. "I'm gonna sleep in the guest room. We don't need to speak until I'm ready." She walked down the hallway. Behind her, she heard nothing. Not his voice, not movement, just the silence of a man who had run entirely out of things to say. For the first time in 2 days, something in her chest loosened slightly. Not healed, not even close to healed. But hers. She saw Sung-jin 3 times that week. The first time was Tuesday, the same coffee shop, morning. She was there before him. She watched him walk in and find her already seated, and something in his expression did the thing it had done before. That careful, unreadable shift before he sat down and ordered and asked her how she was sleeping. "Badly," she said. "You?" "I heard from Minjun," he said. "He called me Sunday night. She had expected this." "What did he say?" "That you'd had a fight. That you were going through something difficult." Sung-jin looked at her steadily. "He didn't mention Lena." "No," Zola said. "He wouldn't." Sung-jin was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, a woman walked past, pushing a stroller. Unhurried, the morning moving around her like water around stone. "He asked me to talk to you," he said. "To put in a good word." Zola looked at him. "And?" "I told him I hadn't spoken to you." He picked up his coffee, which was true at the time. Something about the way he said it, the precision of it, the small, careful honesty, made her feel something warm and inconvenient that she filed away and didn't examine. They talked for 2 hours, about nothing urgent, about Seoul, about Cape Town, about the particular loneliness of living in a city that wasn't the one that made you. He had spent 2 years in London in his late 20s and described the experience with a wry exactness that made her laugh for the first time in days. She had forgotten what her own laugh sounded like. It felt strange in her mouth, like a word in a language she used to speak fluently. When she left, she was aware of him watching her go. She told herself it meant nothing. She almost believed it. The second time was Thursday evening. She had texted him, casually, she had kept it casual, asking if he knew a good place for dinner near Gyeongbokgung. He had responded within minutes, suggesting a small restaurant he liked, then, after a pause, offering to show her where it was, since the streets in that area were confusing after dark. She had said yes before she fully decided to. The restaurant was exactly what he had described, unpretentious, warm, the kind of place where the menu was short because everything on it was done properly. They sat across from each other at a low table and ordered and talked, and she was aware the entire time of the specific quality of his attention. He listened the way very few people listened, not waiting for his turn, not constructing responses while she was still speaking, just actually there, actually receiving what she said. She told him about her father's garden in Cape Town, about the way the light came in off the Atlantic in the late afternoon and turned everything gold and slightly unreal, about how she had spent the first 20 years of her life in that light and hadn't understood until she left it that it had been shaping her in ways she was still discovering. He told her about his grandmother's house in Jeonju, about learning to cook from her because she refused to let anyone in her kitchen who wasn't learning something. about how he still made her jangjorim when he was feeling unmoored, and how the smell of it alone was enough to reset something in him. "What makes you feel unmoored?" she asked. He considered it honestly. "Watching people I care about make choices I can see the end of," he said. "And not being able to say anything." She held that, like Minjun. "Like several people," he said carefully, "over several years." She looked at him across the low table, the restaurant warm around them, the evening outside gone fully dark. The thing that had been forming in her since the hotel room was very clear now. She could see its shape completely. She knew what it was, knew why she wanted it, knew that it was not innocent and had not started innocent, and that she had been honest with herself about that from the beginning. She was done being what was expected of her. She was choosing this, both eyes open. "Sung-jin," she said. He looked at her. "I need to tell you something." The third time was Saturday. She did not text him first. She went to his apartment. She had been there twice before, always with Minjun, always briefly, and knocked. And when he opened the door, he looked at her for a long moment without speaking. "You know why I'm here," she said. Not a question. "Yes," he said. "And you know what it is and what it isn't." Something moved across his face, complicated, honest. "Yes," he said again. "Then we understand each other." He stepped back from the door. She walked in. She woke in the early hours of Sunday morning in a room that wasn't hers, and lay still in the dark for a long time, looking at the ceiling. The satisfaction she had anticipated was there, cold and clean, and exactly what she had designed it to be. She had done what she intended to do. Minjun had taken something from her that he had no right to take, and she had answered it in the most precise language available to her. She had been deliberate. She had been clear-eyed. She had chosen this. And underneath the satisfaction, quieter but persistent, something else. Not regret. She examined it carefully to make sure and found it wasn't regret. Something more like the particular emptiness that follows when you have been planning something for so long that the doing of it leaves a space the planning used to fill. She had thought it would feel like power. It felt like something lonelier than that. Beside her, Sung-jin was awake. She could tell by his breathing, the specific stillness of someone lying quietly with their own thoughts. Neither of them spoke for a while. The city made its soft nighttime sounds beyond the window. "Are you okay?" he asked finally. His voice was low, careful. "I don't know yet," she said, which was the honest answer. He was quiet again for a moment, then, "Zola." "Don't apologize," she said. "You didn't do anything to me." "I know." He paused. "I was going to say, I don't think this helped you." She closed her eyes. "No," she said, "but I didn't really think it would." He called her the next afternoon. She was sitting at the kitchen table in the apartment, a cup of tea going cold in front of her, when his name appeared on her screen. She looked at it for one ring, two, then picked up. "I can't do this again." His voice was different from yesterday, tighter, more contained, like something had been decided while she slept. "Not because I didn't. Not because it wasn't." He stopped, started again more carefully. "I know what it was. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But I won't be a weapon. And I won't let you be one either. You're worth more than what you were trying to do last night." The words landed somewhere she hadn't expected them to. "You're not wrong," she said quietly. "Did it change anything? With Minjun, I mean, in how you feel?" She thought about it. Really thought about it, the way she'd been trying to think about everything lately. Honestly, without the comfortable softening of self-deception. "No," she said. "What he did is still what he did. What she did is still what she did. She stopped. You needed to do something, he said. Something that was yours. Yes. The simplicity of being understood landed quietly. Something like that. A long pause. Outside the apartment window, a delivery bike passed, its small motor fading into the street noise. What happens now? He asked. I leave, she said. Not today, but soon. Another pause. Longer this time. Okay, he said. Just that. She sat with the word after she hung up. Okay. Not don't go, not stay, not let's see what this could be. Just okay. The particular grace of a man who understood that some things were not his to hold on to. She picked up her cold tea, drank it anyway. Min-jun found out on a Wednesday. Not from her. Not from Sung-jin. From a colleague's wife who had seen Zola and Sung-jin leaving the restaurant Thursday evening. Seen them together. Seen the way they were together. And mentioned it to her husband, who mentioned it to Min-jun over lunch with the specific casualness of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. He was home when she got back that evening. She could tell from the hallway. The quality of the silence was wrong, pressurized, the kind that had a person at the center of it. He was standing in the kitchen. He hadn't turned the lights on. In the gray late evening light coming through the window, he looked like a man who had been standing in that spot for hours, turning something over and over until it had worn grooves in him. Sung-jin, he said. Just the name, like a verdict. Zola set her bag down, did not look away from him. Yes. The rage that moved across his face was enormous and genuine, and she watched it with the calmness of someone who had been expecting weather and had simply waited for it to arrive. He was loud, louder than she had ever heard him, louder than she had thought him capable of being. And the words came fast and tangled, and she let them come, let the storm move through the room until it began to run out of itself. When he finally stopped, she said evenly, "Are you finished? You went to my brother. You went to my sister." Her voice did not rise, did not waver. For 8 months, in our home, in our bed, she let that sit for exactly the right amount of time. You don't get to be angry at me. You lost that. That's completely different. Min-jun. She said his name the way you say something for the last time. Stop. He stopped. She looked at him in the dim kitchen. This man she had married. This man she had followed to a city that never fully felt like home. This man who had taken her devotion and treated it like a given, and felt something in her chest that wasn't love anymore, and had not been for longer than she wanted to admit. I'm leaving, she said. Not today, but soon. And you are going to make it easy for me. His jaw tightened. And if I don't, she reached into her bag, took out her phone, opened the document she had been keeping since the morning after. Dates, messages, a paper trail she'd assembled quietly and carefully over the past 2 weeks, and held the screen toward him. She watched him read. She watched him understand. Where did you get? It doesn't matter. She put the phone away. Do we understand each other? The fight went out of him visibly. Not dramatically, not all at once, just a slow deflation like something structural had given way. He sat down at the kitchen table, looked at his hands. Yes, he said, quietly. Good. She picked up her bag. I'll be in the guest room. You can sleep wherever you like. We don't need to speak again until the lawyers do. She walked out of the kitchen. Behind her, nothing. No footsteps, no voice, no last attempt. Just silence. She went to the guest room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. Her hands were completely steady. Her breathing was even. She waited for something to break open inside her and found that nothing did. She had already done her breaking. She was on the other side of it now. She lay back on the bed, fully dressed, stared at the ceiling, and let herself think about Cape Town for the first time in a long time. The light, the mountain, her mother's kitchen, the particular smell of home that no other place had ever replicated, no matter how long she stayed somewhere else. Soon, she thought. Soon. She told him she was leaving on a Friday morning, not by text. She called, and he picked up on the second ring the way he always did, like he kept his phone close when he was expecting something important. She had noticed that about him early on and filed it away with all the other things she had noticed about him that she was not supposed to be noticing. "I booked a flight," she said. "Tuesday." A pause. Small, contained. "Okay. I wanted to tell you myself." "I'm glad you did." She was standing at the guest room window looking out at the street below. A woman walking a small dog. A child on a bicycle with training wheels wobbling determinedly along the pavement. The ordinary Tuesday morning texture of a city that had no idea what was happening to her. She had spent 3 years looking out of windows in this city feeling like she was watching someone else's life. She would not miss that feeling. "Can I see you before you go?" he asked. She had known he would ask. She had already decided the answer. "Yes," she said. "But somewhere outside, somewhere that's just normal." "I know a park," he said, "near Naxon. It's quiet in the mornings." "Sunday," she said, 10 o'clock. I'll be there." She hung up and stood at the window a little longer. The child on the bicycle made it halfway down the block before the wobbling won, and a foot came down to steady things. She watched the small recovery, the rebalancing, the resuming, and felt something in her chest acknowledge it quietly. Sunday was gray and cool, the kind of soul morning that couldn't decide between autumn and something colder. The park near Naxon was exactly what he had promised. Unhurried, mostly empty at that hour. Old trees lining a path that curved up slightly toward a view of rooftops and distant hills softened by morning haze. Sung Jin was already there when she arrived, hands in his coat pockets, looking out at the view, and he turned when he heard her footsteps on the path with an expression she could not fully read and had stopped trying to. They walked for a while without speaking. The path was narrow enough that they were close, their arms occasionally brushing, neither of them moving away, and the city spread out below them in that particular Sunday quiet that made Seoul feel briefly like it belonged to whoever was awake inside it. "Are you ready?" he asked eventually. "To leave?" She considered it honestly. "I think I've been ready for longer than I knew." He nodded slowly. They walked a few more steps. "I owe you an apology," she said. He looked at her. "You don't." "I used you," she said, simply, clearly, without softening it. "I came to you with a purpose, and it wasn't a fair one, and you deserve better than being a piece in someone else's mess." "You told me what it was from the beginning," he said. "I made my own choice. I know. But knowing what something is doesn't always make it not harmful." He was quiet for a moment. A bird landed on the path ahead of them, considered them briefly, and lifted away. "I'm not harmed," he said. "I want you to know that. Whatever it was, whatever it became, I don't regret it." A pause. "I regret the circumstances, not the thing itself." She looked at him. In the gray morning light, he looked exactly like himself. No performance, no carefully managed impression. Just a man standing on a path, being honest about something that cost him something to be honest about. "Sung Jin," she said. "I know," he said quietly. "I know, Zola." They stood for a moment looking out at the city below. Somewhere in the middle distance, a church bell was ringing, slow and unhurried, counting out the hour. "If things were different," she started. "They're not," he said. "Not unkindly. The same words she had said to him in the coffee shop weeks ago returned to her now with the same gentleness she had intended then. She recognized the gift of it. "No," she said. "They're not." She turned to face him fully. He was already looking at her. Had been looking at her, she suspected, since she arrived, storing something away the way people store things they know they won't get to keep. She reached out and took his hand, held it for a moment. Just that. Just the warmth and steadiness of it. The particular realness of a person you found at the wrong time in the wrong way and couldn't do anything about. Then she let go. "Take care of yourself," she said. "You too." His voice was even. His eyes were not. "Cape Town is lucky." She smiled. Small, genuine, the kind that arrived before she decided on it. Then she turned and walked back down the path toward the park entrance, toward the street, toward Tuesday and the flight and everything that came after. She did not look back, not because it didn't hurt, because it did. And she was walking anyway. If you are just coming across this channel you support, could mean so much. Please like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on the stories I'll be posting in the future.